morning, Sandra. Good morning, friends. Welcome to Heartwood Thursday. Welcome to Heartwood Thursday. If you could please silence your phones, and if you are at home, please mute your microphone. Venerable Panawati is offering a book study. The class is each Thursday at 5 p.m. The book is Learning from Buddha by Buddha Master His Holiness Dorje Chang Buddha III. If you are interested in joining, please visit the retreat page on our website and select the book study option. The Novena prayers are occurring monthly, every third Thursday, which for August is tonight. There is still time to register your confidential prayer request for yourself, your loved ones, including pets, who are sick, suffering, misfortune, or departed, to prayer@heartwoodrefuge.org. Fully vaccinated Sangha members are invited to Heartwood for Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday Dharma, as well as the Thursday book study. Please like, follow, and share Heartwood and Thrifty Treasures, and add some great things that your teachers out there saying on all social media to help spread the word of the Dharma and further Heartwood's mission. Like things for teachers. If you want to donate to Heartwood, you can do so by visiting the Heartwood website and clicking the donate button. You can also support us through Amazon via our wish list or choosing Heartwood on Amazon Prime.
Good afternoon, friends. So I know many people were anxious for me to return and to hear what happened during our time with Buddha Master. And it was truly an auspicious time. But that kind of leaves you speechless. It's rare that I'm speechless. But leaving a Dharma assembly like that really helps one to see oneself and the dichotomy that exists within our confused mind. And as it settles on me and the confusion in my own mind settles, I realize there is less and less that should be said. So we're going to give this a try today and see how this goes. I'll be better next week when I'm more back to Panawati. But it was a wonderful experience. If one could really see what was happening. But one thing I do want to say is if you're not already in the Thursday, is that Thursday class? That class is closed. So if you're already enrolled, you may continue. If you're not enrolled, that class is now closed. I didn't realize something, but going forward, that would not be an open class. I have to know who's in the class. And I have the responsibility of making the determination as to whether this is something that one can hear that will be a help and not a hindrance. And I just opened it up to everybody since it's there in writing, but it does discuss some things that some people may either not be ready to hear or not be interested in hearing, and that can cause some harm. So if you could just pass that word, if you're not already enrolled in that class, you will not be eligible to join at this time. And when I have further when I think about it a little more deeply, about who it can help versus who it would hinder, then I will certainly open it up for registration again. Some of the things that we talked about in the Dharma assembly would take more than this whole set time that we have for today's Dharma to express. So I'll think about the best way to share it because it's a Dharma talk all by itself. And the things that happened. And so I did get clarification on why Buddha. I'll get clarification on why Buddha Master was very angry with me about something after, like, on this high mountain peak, elated at the things that he said and so forth, and then boom, just like that, I dropped into disfavor. He said, cultivators don't think like that. But it was such a sharp rebuke. That's all he said. Cultivators don't think like that. And I thought it was a good thought. So I had to figure out what that meant. And I picked up a book of Panya-dipas this morning by Wu Wei Wu. It was a book that Panya-dipa or a series of books by a Taoist master that we had discovered, how long, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, something like that. We picked up this book and said, this man is talking nonsense. Like, then we put it down. We picked it up 5 years later and we said, oh, this is deep stuff, and put it down. We picked it up 5 years after that. And we were like, wow, this is really real. We get glimpses of it, but we can't understand it and put it down, but then we picked it up. Well, he picked it up and I just happened to leaf through it. And it's like I could understand every page, the writing, but could not yet explain it to others. Like he did, very succinctly, 2 or 3 sentences. Takes more than that, you don't know it, And I was like, oh, I could explain this. It might take me an hour, in 10 written pages, but he could explain it in 3 sentences. So that's where I am working. But it was such a joy to go back to something that you have, that was so difficult for you to understand that you didn't even struggle with. You just knew no way to do. You go back and look a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, and now 20 or 20 some years later, and you pick it up like, who wouldn't understand this? This is so simple. Understand it, but can you explain it to someone who was like you were 25 years ago? That dull. Can you explain it so even they can understand? That's where the qualities of a Buddha comes in. Being able to know how to speak to everyone that is in front of them in a way they can understand it and make the Dharma useful in their lives. And he told me through Master ZZ of the things that would come to pass with Heartwood. And I don't know how much of that I can share, or when is the appropriate time to share. But just for me to know was truly wonderful. I thought I would read a little bit because Jim Norris called, and he asked where he could get his hands on a copy of the Dharma that every Buddhist must follow by Nopu Pamu. And when I started studying this book was not available online anywhere. Like 13 or 14 years ago, 15 years ago, whenever I first met Zanzi Zoma Rinpoche. But now it's out there, you know, it's not in reprint, but many people are selling their copies. And so it's available. If you can get your hands on one, you should do it. It's called the Dharma that every Buddhist must follow. And it was translated from the Tibetan by Bodhi Wintu Rinpoche, who also translates Buddha Master's writings. So this is from the chapter on the 20 types of futility. And it talks about 20 things that we do. I like that we don't use the word practitioner. I've long time had difficulty with the word, you know, because if I'm a ball player or whatever, you know, I want to play in the real game. Practice is okay, but at some point you want to be in the real game. Yeah. And we have this mindset of being a practitioner, and there is something lacking in that kind of reference to being real. It can become a made up way of life based on intellectual, on conceptualizations, not what we actually do, what we actually say, what we actually think. And the world that has manifested before us is the result of that. We can't put the blame on anything other than ourselves, our actual deceit in not walking life out in the ways that we say we embrace and that we say we believe. I know people who would go through great lengths to not step on an ant, that would do all manner of harm to another human being and think all kinds of evil towards a human being. That's one who's not a cultivator, maybe a practitioner, but not really a cultivator. Because a cultivator, in the moment that an action is required, makes the effort and sees as his or her end game the perfected walking out of what they claim to embrace, honor, believe, hold as true, and what is their greatest determination. So we know we're all like that. As Buddha Master calls us, what's that phrase? Stinky skin bags. So people get offended by that, but you know, I'm not offended because I know I'm a stinky skin bag. I might like try to spray some perfume when I come in your presence. And so you got the smell of the sickly perfume when it's sprayed on something that needs washing, purifying. It's like that. But when we can like just honestly be with, acknowledge to ourselves. I don't go around telling everybody, hey, guess what? I'm a stinky skin bag. Hey, guess what? I lied yesterday. Hey, guess what? But we should know ourselves how we are doing, whether we are truly entering in. And so there are levels and degrees of truthfulness. And before we can do anything else, accomplish anything else in terms of living out a holy life, is that we have to really, really, really be honest with ourselves. So I'm going to share with you and ask you this week to spend time reflecting on a lesson that I learned this past weekend. We talk about duality and we blah, blah about what we think it is. But if we understand that unification or unity requires the negation of both sides of something, then we would be closer to the truth. For example, pride and humility. You can't rate humility and you can't assess pride without the other one. No. So it's not when they come together, but when both are negated. And there is neither pride nor is there humility. So when we're talking about the ego and getting rid of the ego and maintaining a healthy ego and all of these words we use, it's really far from where the Buddha is trying to take us in his teachings. So we're trying to abandon the self. There is the one who is trying to abandon the self. There's the one who has definite ideas of what it is to abandon the self. And so the self, the false self, can never be abandoned because there is a self reinforcing the whole process of abandonment. And that's why we don't make progress. That's why we strive in spiritual practice. Because we have a firm, definite sense of a self that's based on memory strung together, that creates a continuum in my mind. And on that basis, we cannot ever get out of a phenomenal world because we have both parts of the opposites that we're continually trying to reconcile. Satori is when, for an instant, both of those views fall away. And there is just the vacuous emptiness of mind that's not attached to the memory I, who I think I am. So in the practice of right mindfulness, we have to be cognizant of reality. We talk about a ultimate reality and a relative reality. But, actually the Buddha never talked about a relative reality. That's our modern way of trying to explain things. He just went to the, just the subjective experience. And then you would know, apart from words, what is reality. And we're moving far away, trying to create this kind of lesser tier so that we can understand. We're not going to understand through linguistics, and we're not going to understand apart from direct experience. And so, as Buddha Master was talking to us, you dropped into a space with him that was kind of undefinable. First of all, you can't get a bead. We couldn't get a bead on him. I'm looking, trying to observe, like this man in front of us speaking to us. But it was very difficult to do. I can't explain why. Can you, Soma? Except there is, like, you get a glimpse of what no self is. And when you sit in the presence of that, you become very much aware of how full of self you are. And that was my experience. And we think about how good we are, and yes, we should do good things. We should do good deeds. We should help living beings. We should do whatever we can do. And I say it all the time with no thought I am doing. But when I got in the presence of the reality of that, I really saw how much I am doing. And I was happy to know myself. This is where the rubber begins to meet the road. Oh, people may be suffering, or they want to have stimulating intellectual conversations around, philosophy, religion, pithy sayings, all of that. But that's not what cultivation is. And so some come to the Dharma because they are suffering. Some come to the Dharma for intellectual stimulation. Some come to the Dharma because they want to be around people like themselves, good people, And it's okay, whatever reason we come. But it's why do we stay? What are you looking for? And why are you here? And there are many places that we can go to that give us joy, that give us pleasure, that give us a sense of purpose, that give us, and we have to find out for ourselves which one is right for us. And the one that's right for you is the one that you're willing to do. That's the one that's right. So no need to struggle to do something. Do the one that you're willing to do. He talks about having, or they talk about the Buddha having given 84,000 teachings. That means like just a big number. in 500 BC, right? I mean, it's like, it just means like innumerable. Yeah. But what it was speaking of is there is the right Dharma for every person with the mentality that they have, with the unfolding karma of the present moment, in accord with their wishes. Like we have some choices in this, in accord with their wishes. And so no need for us to struggle. But it's important for us to have a mind rooted in, before you can even get to basic goodness, to have a mind rooted in the deepest honesty that one can pull up. One of the greatest attributes that we can have is to know ourselves. It's not like I want you to be honest all the time, but I should know myself, what I'm thinking. Not just what I'm thinking, but how I am thinking. We get a lot into why, but it's not why as much as in what way does your mind incline? How does your mind typically lean? Does it lean towards judging or towards understanding? Does it lean, towards criticizing or towards being in a free flow that you can just go with what's happening? Does it lean towards my way or the highway, or why should I do what I want to do? Why not do what my friends in the Dharma want to do? I mean, this will let you know where you are on the path to selflessness. So when we're chanting, like the Heart Sutra, we're talking about no eyes, no ears, no tongue, no perception, what does that really mean? Are we like chanting something that has a good cadence, that we think is a high level teaching? And because I can chant it, that I understand it? Does it mean that I walk slow and look at the ground, and because I can walk in slow motion, that I'm like really making progress? And so there is a way that one can step out of all one's troubles, all one's suffering, and the conceit I, but we have to cultivate to do that. So it's really a matter if you really want to. If you want to, it's available in this very life, speedily. But we have to cut out all the fluff. So that means that going forward, there will be some that will be making great strides and great progress. And there will be some of us that don't necessarily want that in this lifetime. And that's okay. I'm trying to think of what things I can share. I'm sorry. This is a learning curve for me because I'm like, I just tell everything, right? I mean, I can't wait. This will be my greatest lesson. Being able to like just hold the thing until the time is right. So, but I'm willing to learn that lesson. For your happiness and welfare as well as my own. So what I wanted to ask you to work on this week is that duality of humility and pride. I want you to notice every time you do something, every time you say something, every time you think something, to ask yourself the question, what was that rooted in? In the beginning, a lot of times it looks like real good. Because I'm so magnanimous and kind and loving and I understand and we can't do any better and look at that. The other day, yesterday, so we arrived late. What day is it? Thursday. Okay, Wednesday. We arrived back home late Tuesday night. And I was just going to stop at Thrifty for a minute, just make sure everything's going smoothly, and so I was there from 10 till 7:30, so I didn't get to come up here to see you. And we had a new person starting, a new manager number 4 in 4 months. And I'm sorry, my head is not straight there. I'm not landed. Oh, yeah. So I didn't get a chance to come by and see everybody. I'm going to try to do that throughout the day and tomorrow. But if you can't hear, like you can sit up here. Just come closer. I have a blanket on. I really do. This is live too, isn't it? Yeah, that's all right. It really is all right. We have a kind of pride in ourselves, that make us have to do something for somebody. We have to look a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way. Some of us know when we're on all the time. It's making up stuff. And some of us don't know. But once you've come to a stop, it's hard to get that ball rolling again. You have to find a new way of being. Not to contrive one that is your face to the world. But we have to become more authentic to keep going. So I was meeting with this new person, and the thing is that I never regret having to make a change. Actually, I like change, and I didn't mind that I had gone through 4 managers in 4 months, because each one was better than the one before. And I find that with a lot of things, once I give up the resistance to having to make a change, the change is actually better. Actually, we don't want to admit that because we're so attached to not changing. But if we were to actually look at it, we could see that once we give up our attachment to something, the way we thought it was going to be, the way that it should be, the way we want people to see it, the way all of those things, once we give those things up, there's an internal stopping. And one's own mind falls away, and one can be truly in the present moment, in the reality of something. And it's so rare that we're anywhere near that we can't understand the person we are. And maybe even it's not something that we think has a benefit, because we like controlling things, we like planning things, we like our own opinions, we like our own ways, we like, and anything that threatens that puts us on guard. Right after this talk, they'll be like, what did you think about that? What did you think happened upon your life? How do you feel about whatever I might say? Because right now, I'm not really trying to say anything. I am just being with you. So that's our habitual tendency to constantly be assessing, judging within the limited field of our perception. Eyes can only see so far. Ears can only hear to a certain distance. We're limited then in regards to the information that we can access, right? And the information that we can pull into our awareness. We're limited by the capacity of our sense organs, our sense gates. But if we weren't that limited, because we weren't so self-conscious, then we could know things. We use the word like intuitively, but it just simply means with the capacity to cross the boundary of the 4th dimension of time, the 3rd dimension of space and time. Just a different set of faculties, or the same faculties unleashed. And that's what happened in the Dharma Assembly. There was no great Dharma discourse given. It's just that he spoke directly to everyone's mind. And he spoke something different, because we were all different. We spent the last 2 days on conference calls sharing what he said. And it was amazing what each one of us heard Mostly we heard a little bit of other things, but mostly we heard about things that impacted each one of us individually. The guidance that we received if you listen to the tape, it was nothing. It wasn't that big of a thing. Just like maybe rambling on and telling a story here and telling a story there. But the impact of it for each one was different. It was right where it needed to be for the questions I had, or for what was ailing me. And that's the true power of Buddha versus dogma. Dogma does not have the spark of life that unravels and dissipates our suffering and confusion. Spoken from the mouth of one who has actually realized. So keep in mind that when you listen to others, including me, that my words, in terms of their quickening ability, only go as far as my realization. And that your words that you give to others, as far as their quickening ability, the ability to cause the scales to fall from one's eyes, heart, mind, only as good as your own realization. And your realization is only as good as your actual cultivation. How would you know for what you can live? And if one makes this commitment to become not just a practitioner who never gets to go out in the real game, just practicing, but to become a cultivator of the true Buddha, then you will be a great benefit in this world, and you will find your own direct roots. Books are not going to free us. Not even a Buddha could free you. If so, it probably wouldn't be here, right? If all a Buddha had to do was blink and you were enlightened. We have to wake up ourselves. And so the question going forward is, do we really want to wake up? That movie Matrix, I understood most of it, not all of it. But I did understand the analogy about the blue pill or the red pill. That once you got a glimpse of reality, it was like too hard. He said, that's okay, give me the other pill. I'd rather go back into an illusory world. And so I had a little taste of cool this past weekend. Passion, the fires of life are cool. Cool doesn't mean aloof. A lot of times we see, and they're walking around like they're so above and beyond, so heavenly minded, so that there is no connection at all with the little people. I don't mean in that way. The cooling cools the fires of life that keep us running in circles, that keep us self-absorbed, that keep us in doubt and confusion. But once you dip your toe in the cool water, have a taste of it, then you know that there is something that actually quenches our thirst. And I think that one of the best ways that I can introduce you to this is to share Buddha Master's way of teaching for minds such as ours. And I was wondering whether I would get permission, because I'm not a high-level teacher, not a Dharma King, not a, have no title, not a, like a Rinpoche. They don't think monks are worth anything. in our tradition, no, they still got to have all the rules. Don't go off the porch. If you go on the porch, don't go out the yard. If so they think that's kindergarten right there. They need all of that to keep them safe. Of course, I have sort of felt that same way for a while myself, even though I am one. Actually, I'd like to not cloud your assignment for this week with a lot of conversation. Do you remember the assignment? Is there anybody who doesn't? Can somebody give it back to you? Yeah, what about it? And what do you think the objective is? To look at how it came up?
Look at our ultimate intention behind the words action.
That's good. Somebody else? Yeah.
Was it to like release the duality?
It's getting better. Keep going.
So I notice the I.
Yeah. Yes.
Where are you on the map? And where do you want to be going?
So all of those were right answers. So, but for this week, I just want you to just recognize and acknowledge. You see, because you see how quickly we can go into one track of thinking. We're off into conceptualizing already. And then we'll spend the rest of the time doing that. So just really quickly seeing and knowing whether there was a sense of pride. Now, I'm not saying that we should respect doing good or goodness. I'm not saying that we should not have respect for I'm not saying that we should have respect for what is unwholesome. I'm simply saying being able to look and know if there was a sense of a self that felt pride or even felt humility in the action, in the thought, in the speech. Until we become so able to know ourselves, our every intention, till we become so crystal clear about what we're doing in any given moment. And that will take us to the doorway to something else. It's a very simple assignment. And I know what you think about yourself after a week. I'd like for us to just sit for the next few moments. I am going to get into this chapter, but not today. In the 20 types of futility for a cultivator. And I can't tell it publicly because I've already been chastised for that. But, when we talk about a miracle, it's just a kind of like unexplained phenomena, like you don't exactly know the reason for that. That's like that's really it. And I had one. And I shared it with the other, how many, eight of us, with the other 8 Dharma teachers. And this is when, right after he had said these things like, do you want to be the master? I will teach you. Right after he said all these things, like, yeah, right now. And then this thing happened. And I was so joyful. And I pulled out my phone and I pulled up some information that had come almost 2 weeks ago. And I read it to that group, just our little group. We went out to dinner afterwards. And then I showed them something else that completely nullified or completely shifted the outcome. I know I'm being cryptic because I can't tell it, but and it got back to him that night because I called Zazie and told her she didn't go out to dinner with us, and she met with him later that night and she told him, and he was upset because he said that we won't talk about. That those things happen, but even when they do, we just kind of say, oh, no such thing happened, and leave it at that. Yes.
Do you think it's because the expression of the sharing of the experience is what fertilizing concept of that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. In Buddha Dasa's book, The Prison of Life, when he starts talking about this is a prison, that's a prison, then he goes getting near the end of the book and he says, even purity is a prison because it takes someone thinking I am pure. And so Buddha Master didn't bother to give me all the step-by-step long-term explanation, all of that. He just cut it right at the axe. Like an axe right at the root. And I was like, well, what did I do? Tell me what, And Wu Wei Wu's book today helped me this morning, helped me to find the answer to it. It's because when that thing came up 2 weeks ago, I decided how I would respond, how I would take the bad news, how I, because I'm such a good practitioner, I can handle it. I did, but the fact that I thought I'm such a good practitioner, I will not let this stop me. I will not let this bother me. I will not let this hinder me. I'm not even going to focus on that. I'm going to stay focused in my intention, to go out to see Buddha Masters, to ask what's the highest and best way that I can live and serve living beings, because I've come to the end of what Panyawadi wants to do. And I'm like, oh, what a good girl am I. Now, it was way down deep there, but it was there. And he pointed me right to it. He wouldn't tell me why. He just said to Zazi, let her know that I'm very mad. That's all he had to say. I'm like, why? And I just had to think about it for a hot minute. Didn't take long to scratch that surface. Because I felt like that was almost sort of like a reward for goodness. But here's the thing about goodness. The true goodness is what one does, and it's not tied to reward of any kind. Not even good fortune. Not even, you might have good fortune, you might not. So when you start tying it artificially to something, you're setting yourself up, not only for a downfall, but you're setting yourself up for reviving the ego. Okay, so now we're really all going to sit for 4 minutes. During this time of sitting, what if we just allowed ourselves to stop thinking, stop conceptualizing, stop making up something? What if we just allowed ourselves to? We're here just sitting in the chair, breathing. And it's one reason why he recommends that we take an object to bring our scattered mind into one place, to gather it all together. So we could like just take the breath. Because feeling or experiencing really doesn't take as much effort. And when we place our awareness, our attention in one activity or It signals the body in a certain way. That allows the mind to tamp down its thinking. And so more awareness naturally comes into our experience. Awareness of sensations in the body, awareness, this feeling. And not feelings, which is a mental activity, but tactile feeling. The coolness of the air on the inhalation. Just feeling the warmth of the air on the exhalation. And right at that moment, after only about 3 or 4 breaths, one can recognize that there is bodily awareness, and one can recognize an untamed mind that runs looking for something because it's just too boring after 2 breaths. Like a dog who wants to play ball. Just looking for something. So maybe in the beginning, you can only sit for a minute before your mind engages and starts to run. But to experience just those few breaths will become precious because it will feel like freedom to you. And your mind will be directed towards that kind of freedom. The freedom from having to be anybody. The freedom from trying to be someone. And it doesn't mean that you will cease to be, but that you will come to know yourself as you truly are. And that can only be directly experienced. It cannot be intellectually understood. And in time you'll see how long you can go without a thought about yourself or something that concerns you. Hardly a minute. It's where I'm going to eat, what I'm going to do, when this will be over so I can leave, how I'm feeling, oh, it's too hot in here. Because we're so totally absorbed. And that is the root of our suffering and the hindrance to vast realization, awakening, wisdom. This is a simple practice of restraint and discipline. Disciplining the mind to learn how to sit. And our discipline is rewarded by the exercising of restraint in our life. We stop making mistakes that we make. And restraint is for what? Freedom from remorse. So discipline has a reward, which is restraint. Restraint has a reward. It's freedom from remorse. And freedom from remorse for the sake of joy. That's how joy comes into our life. Freedom from remorse. On the basis of being able to exercise restraint. And to having developed discipline. I think we're almost halfway through. So maybe next week, one of that when we come together again, right? I know I didn't tell you what you're waiting to hear. I will. Because everything in its own time, okay?